Man, oh man, that's what I need right there. That launcher is the one. It's pretty, and look at it. He's shooting stuff and it's just busting it. It's breaking stuff. And we all know if it breaks stuff, that means it's going to stop somebody. It's guaranteed. If I have that launcher, all my problems will be solved. That's what I need, and I'm going to do it because he's telling me to. Hi everybody, welcome back for another video. I am not a video gamer. I really know nothing about them, but I have heard this term of an NPC, or a non-player control. And these are characters that are embedded within the game. These are not the players, and the players are controlling their actions. These are people who are coded in, and they're players, but they're controlled. So they're not something that you can manipulate. But they are there, and they behave and they act without thinking. They go in a pre-programmed controlled manner, and they respond to things that you do. And there is an analogy that I want to make, and I want to just make the point that I don't think that we should be a non-player control in life in general, and especially not in terms of your less lethal defense and your thinking about it. And there's just important aspects of that you need to consider. I talk about this a lot, and I talk about how important it is that you think about your less lethal defense and you are not overly influenced by salesmanship and demonstrations that are designed to capture your attention and convince you that a certain product or a certain less lethal launcher or a certain thing that costs money is something that you need to invest in. I want to show you something here, and then let's come back. We're going to have a frank conversation, and I just want to say ballistics, terminal ballistics, things like this get people's attention, and I think people like to see that. They want to see what effect these types of launchers will have on an object, like a really thick piece of wood. And I'm as guilty as anyone of shooting stuff like that. And I've even been known to keep some of these around for a while, just to sort of look at them and figure out just how much force it takes to make these types of holes. And it does get your mind to thinking. It stirs your imagination about what would happen if these were on a person. So let's talk about this a little bit. So my feelings on this are that these types of impact studies are fine and dandy. They're good for demonstrating relatively general degrees of power that you might have in maybe a 10 joule increment, between a 10 joule and a 20 joule and a 30 joule. And you can start to see more damage as you go up. Where I don't like it is when person X wants to claim that an increase that they generated by doing some manipulation increased from 20 joules to 23 joules, and that 3 joules is super great because that's a 10% increase in joules, and that's going to make a huge difference. Well, yes, every single joule matters, but there's statistical significance and there's biological significance. And the statistical significance means that you do it, and you do it multiple times, and you do a statistical test, and you do a t-test or some other test, and you derive a p-value, and you determine that the chances of that happening and that difference is statistically less than 5%, for example. And you set that as your criteria, and that p-value means that it's significant. Well, just because something is slightly higher significantly, and people look at it and say, yeah, the trend is there. Maybe it didn't even pass statistical significance, but person X wants to portray it as a major advance. Well, what you have to keep in mind is the biological significance of another joule or two, or a 10% increase in joules from a low impact launcher to still a low impact launcher with a few more joules,
is probably biologically insignificant, because your ultimate goal is not to make a better hole, or it is to stop someone. And I believe that the stopping someone and changing their mind, there's a gradient, and it's going to be going up, and it's going to be going up. And at some point, you will actually then achieve a critical mass of pain that the person will stop. But that difference, when it's going up at those low levels, an increase here, those will be insignificant. There won't be a measurable response of the person in terms of changing their actions. Only when you reach a threshold of pain, and their brain tells them to stop moving forward, will you get the desired response. So a lot of this nitpicking, I got a better hole here, a better hole there, or I shot multiple projectiles and they differ by weight of a gram or two here. I've done some testing with a 3-gram difference between actually it was between a 7 and a 10 gram. And with that 3 extra gram, I did 3 different videos on 3 different types of targets. I saw no difference in the damage that I did on computer screens, on books. So a 3-gram difference in a projectile weight made no difference. That doesn't mean that if you didn't do 20 more examples and you didn't really try, you might be able to find a statistical significance that's very marginal. But at the end of the day, the effects that I saw visually there's a trivial difference, and it really wasn't significant either way. And there was actually examples where the lighter projectile looked better sometimes, and other times the heavier projectile looked better. So there's definitely some flux. So I believe that, and I think it's probably not fair to say, but the ballistics that people do for less lethal launchers on these objects is, it's not scientific, but I consider it pseudoscientific, because you can do a lot of hand waving and you can make assumptions and you can say, this is better, this projectile is a little better, or this launcher now after this particular change is a little bit better. Another person who does the same thing may get a different result. These types of things, they happen. There's videos out there of these major advances that people are so excited about, and then 6 months later, nobody's talking about it because it didn't work. It just didn't pan out. Nobody cares anymore about those changes because those changes did not result in reproducible effects for people down the road. That's science. There's papers that get published with much fanfare, and then 5 years later, nobody can remember it because it didn't hold up. So that's the reality. So anytime you get into these pseudosciences and you start doing these type of ballistic comparisons, and with firearms and with penetration and with ballistic gels and those kind of things, those are actually physiologically relevant endpoints for comparing bullet calibers and weights and things like that. Those have meaning. But for less lethals, if you're going to do a ballistic gel, to me, I've never understood why that would be important. We don't care about penetration at all. We don't actually care what kind of holes you generate in a piece of wood. We care about the effects on a human, and we can't test that, and we're not going to test that. So we just have to go with our gut in terms of knowing, well, this is roughly the right amount of force. But don't be misled, and don't be an NPC. Don't, just because person X says, you should buy this because it's better. Okay, he said it, I'm doing it. That's not a very good approach. You'll end up buying things that fail on you. You'll end up buying things that you then have to learn how to maintain and take them apart. Maybe you never intended to ever be a less lethal gunsmith, but now you've bought something that otherwise is now a $500 brick. It's useless unless you now learn how to take it apart and open up and get the many O-rings in there and make sure they stay lubed. And now you've got just so much work involved in maintaining this thing. When you buy a launcher, they are never just a freestanding launcher that you never have to maintain. They always have to be opened up. They always have to be maintained. Even your Byrnas, the lower end launchers will last a lot longer. They will not break down. The Byrnas and the Umarex T4Es and those kind of things. But if you go to higher power and you're going anything above 30, 40 joules, believe me, they will break down. You have to maintain them. You have to take that shell, open it up, get in there, and you have to be able to look at the parts, and the O-rings need to be lubed. And you need to check the O-rings to make sure they're not wearing and they have damage. So I talked about these kind of things way back, and people sort of just move on and then they sort of forget about it. But I just want to remind you, gunsmithing is an essential skill. You need to be able to do it. There's no such thing as a maintenance-free launcher, especially the high-power ones. So be smart in your decisions. Sometimes what you already have is the best for you. That's all I'm going to say about this one. Take care, everybody. See you next time.